It's been a while. In fact, it's a lot longer than I was thinking that it was going to be. But progress has been made. But what progress have you made, Woody? Well, over the next few minutes, I'll tell you exactly what we've done. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome to WMD, that's Woody's Modelling Diary. Today I'm going to start the long job of sorting this baseboard out. This is the last sort of major project on this layout. I'll have to excuse the carnage of things being piled up, but in effect this layout is divided into 4 baseboards. And this is probably the last one which hasn't received much attention as of yet. So today I've actually separated the tracks, cut through them at the baseboard joint, so all 4 baseboards are now movable and separate. So the next job is just to see what the spaghetti-like wiring that I've got to tidy up underneath is like. So without any further ado, let's lift this and see what it's like. Yes. There's a fair old spaghetti of wires under there, which I've now got to try and make sense of, as well as fitting in the point motors, which I've previously cut the slots for. So that will make life a bit easier. But the rest of it I've now got to make sense of. So without further ado, I better start on that. I'll come back later on, which will probably be a few days. Whilst I'm just trying to bring some sense to this spaghetti of wiring, I'm using these Electech multi-connectors. Talked about them before on the channel. If you haven't seen them before, basically they enable you to connect in 2 circuits where you've got multi-wires, such as for this DCC wiring, and then you can bring 2 wires out to go to your controller or wherever. It's just a very neat way of doing your wiring. What I'm doing as well is the wires themselves, if that will focus, I think it will. I'm just soldering the ends where I've bared the actual wire itself. Just makes a little bit of a stronger bond when you screw down on the connector. And the other thing which I do is tend to twist the wires together. Not sure how technically true it is, but I've seen a lot of advice in magazines, books and on the internet that if you're using DCC, it's best to in effect twist the wires together. Anyway, back to the wiring. There's certainly a lot more to do. Oh my god. Well, it's a few days on from the last segment of this video, probably about 5 hours of work, but I've managed to connect up and make sense of most of the wiring. All feeds into that central point there, which will eventually go to a control panel. You may notice that there are a few yellow wires. I've run more or less out of white wire, and I've had to substitute this yellow wire. Not the best way to go, but I know what it's about, and I think anybody looking at it at a later stage would know about it as well. So let's move on to the point motors. That's going to be fun. I'm about 2 weeks on from the first segment of this video. I've now really finished the wiring. Point motors are in, they're wired up, all 9 point motors. So there's seemingly a lot of wiring, but it makes sense to me. I have color coded it, so it should make sense to most people who might have a look at it at some other point. One of the interesting points is, pardon the pun, but I've connected this point motor and this point motor in series or parallel, and I'll explain that in a minute. But all the wiring at the moment goes up to these two chocolate block connectors, and these are 2 parts. That just plugs in so that I can take that away and play around with it when I connect it into the yet to be constructed control panel, and that should make life a lot easier if I can get that back in. There's just some wires temporarily connected there, just because the control panel isn't built yet, so I can temporarily power up the track and run trains. But let's have a look at these points. Right, these 3 lines here are in effect marshalling yard, goods yard, whatever you want to call it. But excuse the transformer there, that's just a temporary measure to power up the point motors. What I have got here is the point leading off into this marshalling area. I've got a catch point here, and the idea in prototypical terms is that when the main line is straight on and there's no access into the yard, that catch point in effect is opened, so that if anything comes out of the marshalling yard or goods yard, it derails before it gets onto the main line, therefore preventing any potential collisions. So what I've done, I showed underneath that I'd in effect wired 2 point motors in series. So in effect, when the mainline point opens into the marshalling yard, the catch point closes, and when the point is straight ahead on the main line, the catch point is open. So I'm quite pleased with that. One of those little bits which should amuse me for a while. Anyway, still more to do, so come back a bit later. Well, it's about 5 weeks on from the last segment of the video when I finished the installation of the wiring and point motors. And just whilst I'm talking about point motors, a quick mention of Dylan and James from Dillington Model Railway, a great channel to watch. Dylan's a very, very talented young modeller, and his granddad James is an equally talented modeller, both very modest in their achievements. But just a quick mention to Dylan, it's not too late to think about putting some point motors on your narrow gauge OON layout. You haven't ballasted the track yet, so have a think about that. Anyway, back to what we've done here. So this was mainly a bare board before, so there's a few bits added. We're nowhere near finishing it, but it's worth just having a look at what's happened here. So just to take you around a little bit, the first thing you'll notice is this sort of retaining wall here, and that runs the full length of that baseboard, so it's about 6 foot long. It's plywood sort of backing to it with card and then Metcalfe brick papers. You may notice a slight difference in these brick papers from these brick papers, and that's because my old stock of Metcalfe papers, which I bought about 15 years ago, they've changed the printing of the new sheets, but it will all blend in with some weathering. So that's added there. Sort of runs into the tunnel section, and I'm thinking about reconstructing that tunnel section in plywood the same way I've done this. You live and learn as you model. I've also got some profile boards on the front of the layout, and you may be wondering what that is. Well, because I've got this island platform completely isolated from any means of safely getting on it without crossing the tracks, there is going to be a bridge across here. There'll be a station building and a road leading off into that part. I've got my sort of goods yard stroke marshalling yard here, which is big enough to store, well, I've got 8 of these arc tipplers on there, or you can store about probably 6 bogie wagons of the longer length of those tankers. I've also got the ability to stable DMUs or other locos there, as well as having this station area here. So that's come together quite nicely, and that's a good contrast to the sort of 2 main lines where I've got these 2 hidden loops at the back there, which means in effect I can vary 4 different trains just running around the main line, which is quite nice. But I've got this sort of area to do sort of a bit more serious operation, bit of shunting and so on. So that's all come together. But let's talk a little bit about this retaining wall, and I'm just going to have to move the camera and put it stable so I can show you what exactly I've done there. So you may be thinking, that's all very good, Woody, but what happens if you need to get to the track to deal with a derailment or track maintenance? Well, we've got this covered. Basically, this lifts off. Does look suspiciously like a small baseboard, doesn't it? I wonder what that could end up being. Take that out of the way for the moment. And then we've got the main structure here, which basically these cross members have small tabs in them, which then fit into these slots in the back. And there's tabs there, so basically it's a little bit of a faff, but at the end of the day you do get a solid structure, and that means obviously I can get to all the track, do a major derailment. Obviously I'm hoping my track work is such that that will be a rare occurrence. That's a rather optimistic thought, but there you go. Or indeed if I need to maintain the track in some way for cleaning, or if there is some issue, I can remove that and get to it quite easily. So I'm really pleased. So that's where we are at the moment. Obviously there's a lot more to do, but this is my last great project. It's something which is probably going to take my lifetime to finish the rate I'm going, but I do have other interests as well going on. But we are at a position now where things are really beginning to get, coming together. In essence, that's the last sort of unscenic area to do. The rest of the layout has, pardon me, or excuse me, rubbish there. The rest of the layout has got the basics of scenery on it. So once that's done and this board is actually wired up and the point motors put in, I can think about constructing a control panel, which will mean that I can then sit back a little bit and run some trains. But equally, we can still run some trains, so let's have a look at a few running. that's just a quick run round of a few trains there. As you can see, EWS coming out to the front with a little bit of Central Networks, one of my favourite sort of periods, and two companies have a bit of a interest in. But anyway, I hope you found this of some interest and maybe give you some ideas. But in the meantime, to those of you who've subscribed, I always say, always astounded that people subscribe and want to see what I'm up to. But thank you very much, it does mean a lot. Thank you for watching, and you take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Bye.